Well, hello, hello. We're back again for another Wet Ink Wednesday, and this time I'm going to be talking to game designer Samantha Wren Nolton about Herd, the dinosaur survival card game. Is that the subtitle we're using for it? Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that is what we landed on for herd. So
Yeah.
yeah, great to be here.
Well, welcome. And before we get into Herd, you, it's my interview style to set up what I'm going to talk about later first, and then, but we're not going to talk about that yet. So, like, what's coming, but not yet.
All right.
Because before we talk about that game specifically, I want to know like how you became a game designer because I know a little bit about it and like your involvement in various forms of tabletop that you're about to tell me about. But like, what was your route into gaming and as is a hobby? First as a hobby, and then I assume first as a hobby, then as a career or something. So like, what's the two steps, right? What's the first one, then the other, right?
Yeah, totally. I got into tabletop gaming like super early in 1998 when I was like 10 years old. Started with like, Magic the Gathering, Warhammer, back when those were like at their peak, and really got into them. That was like my main passionate hobby for a long time. And uh, after a while, a lot of the world building and story elements and lore of those games really hooked me and got me into writing and world
Mm.
building itself. And
You
it
just
just
had to
kind of,
read all the Mishra novels and then make your own, right?
yeah, and it just kind of clicked that that became like what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to design games. I wanted to build worlds. I wanted to
Mm.
experience the industry from the inside. I wanted to contribute to it as a designer, not just in a capacity in like sales or marketing or that sort of thing, even though professionally I do a lot of that as well. And so I just kind of dove in feet first with game design and eventually found my way into the industry working in like several professional capacities while also doing my own game design work. Um, Herd has obviously been a huge passion project of mine for the past like 2 years now, two,
Yeah.
3 years maybe. And it's one of like probably seven games I've got like on the table in terms of development.
I
And the
mean, I
first one
think I think that's pretty normal. I think that's pretty normal.
that'll be yeah, I might have a little bit of like game design ADHD. I create a bunch of different ones and then kind of work on finalizing and finishing them one at a time when I can. So Herd is the one that we're currently like, focusing on. It's been an amazing development process and I'm really excited. We're ready to launch it finally.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, we're going to talk more about that in just a second, but I do want to know like what were your first forays into it? Like did it start with like because you said you were playing the games and the Magic the Gathering, did you make your own like I can imagine somebody that was like, okay, Magic cards are easy. All I've got to do is like I'm going to draw a grid on a page and then I'm going to design new Magic cards, or I'm going to not a grid on a page, like divide the page into
Oh
like,
yeah.
8 squares, and then I can design new Magic cards that way and then cut them out and then put them in the card sleeves, and then was it is it something like that? What was your first actual sparks? What were your first attempts to like design stuff? Like, and what were
Yeah,
you trying to emulate, or what inspired you,
that's a really good question. I think at first I kind of started modestly with like miniature games, trying to create like my own skirmish game.
Hmm. That's not
Which
modest, I don't think.
it proved not to be. So it that one is still sort of waiting in the wings to get relaunched. But yeah, I first started, experimenting with like designing miniatures games and cards for that and sort of stuff, and then really started to refine like how I understood how mechanics should work in a game, how they integrate with different game types like deck
Mm.
builders or board games or card games or things outside of the miniatures genre. Herd was weirdly enough inspired by like deck building games at first. I played a lot of those when I was working for another company in the past. And something about the way that those like just kind of flow clicked with me. But obviously, Herd is not a deck builder, but it definitely took some inspiration from some of those early forays into those.
Sure. I have one. I mean, maybe this is a better question for the end when I ask you about like what else you've got going on. But like, I'm curious because I don't think I've ever talked to somebody who's really into the miniature side. I've played miniatures games and I've borrowed other people's models and I've made a few models myself, but there are people who have bookshelves full of models and they're painted and they get really into the crafting of the bases and how many layers of foam core you need to like make a mountainscape, and they're really into the, individual blades of grass on the base and stuff like that. There's a very much a hands-on crafting. I mean, you said the word building. Oh man, you said the word world building as something that inspired you. Is the model the reason you keep coming back? Is that part of the miniatures hobby side of it for you, where you're like, I get to craft the tiny details and paint the sigils on the armors and or is that or is that not, what is there has to be something there, or because people really love that part of the hobby.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, the hobby side of things for miniatures is a huge part for me. Obviously, being able to craft your own narrative, create your own characters, paint them how you want, build your army from the ground up and make it something uniquely you is always really exciting. But when I do say world building, I mean specifically the lore building, the
Mm,
writing, the development of an entire world. It might be a little bit of hubris since I studied as a writer, but from a very early age, I was like, I would see stuff from like World of Warcraft or from reading the Warhammer codexes and novels and all of that, and be like, well, shit, I can do that. I can write I can write fictional worlds to create stuff. Why don't I do
right,
that for a game
right.
and make something unique?
Yeah. I think that's, I mean, I think that is it's so important to have those sort of like things that you resonate with, and it really is. I mean, it's not like a better or it's not like a special kind of person that does that, but it is sort of like a different sort of person who looks at something and is like, "Ooh, I want to read another book like that," or looks at something and is like, "Ooh, I want to make one of those." Like you start with like you've, whatever you're writing a. Who hasn't started writing a short story that is basically just the plot of a movie that you saw, except you've changed some names, or you're like, you know, um, or you read a comic book and you're like, ooh, what if it was those characters, but they're in a different place? And, you start, I don't know.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, people kind of knock it, obviously, but sometimes when you're like really young or like in, middle school or high school, whatever, like writing fan fiction is like a good way to get into a creative mindset and find that as like kind of a springboard for future stuff. And sometimes a game design or even like a world that you've created or something kind of starts off with that attitude of like, fine, I'll go make my own whatever thing with blackjack and hookers,
that's
just
a
because
that's a Futurama reference for the kids out there. Um, um, uh, all right. Well, so I mean, obviously dinosaurs are awesome. So, I mean, that's sort of like an obvious thing, but is like, does that go back? Are you like a kid who was like playing in the gravel of the side of the hill, thinking you were gonna discover the next, you know, you know, I'm trying to think of a name that isn't Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's the most famous dinosaur for a reason, but it's like it's some sort of Afro-Venator or something like that. Like obviously not that one because that
yeah.
one's newer, but like, you're in the I'm going to discover a theropod if I just keep digging out this gravel enough, is that, or does it go back a long way like that for you?
It goes back to the very beginning for me. Literally right in the hospital bed I was born, my first book was a dinosaur book. I was
All
like
right.
literally given it as a birth gift. Dinosaurs are a thing that is just beyond something I'm passionate about. It's nearly spiritual for me. I mean,
Hmm.
paleontology is one of my greatest passions. Uh, yeah, as a kid, I probably dug around in the dirt and stuff, but as an adult, I've actually found fossils in the real world. I've gone out on digs. I've found fossils. I've got a small collection of stuff I've collected in the field. I moved to Bozeman, Montana because the Museum of the Rockies is here. And that's like, this is the forefront of an area that's just deep into paleontology. It's a significant part of my life and something I've been deeply ingrained in since I was very, very young. So obviously I wanted to make games based around dinosaurs, which there simply are not many of out there. My miniatures game is themed around dinosaurs. Herd is themed
Mm,
around dinosaurs. The name of my design studio, Fossil Punk Foundry, is inspired by dinosaurs, of course, fossils,
right,
and
right.
fossil punk, which is like sort of a genre I coined. So it's deeply important to me and just something I'm be incredibly passionate about.
So I know Hell Creek Formation, right? So is that what you're saying that like the Bozeman is that near Bozeman or is that
Yeah,
the different part of the state? Because Montana's a big state.
Montana's on the crux of, I believe, the Hell Creek Formation and the Morrison Formation, which are
Ah,
both really
yes,
fossil beds.
yes. Those are yes, I know the Morrison Formation as well. Of it. I'm not
Sure.
an expert, I mean, dedicated amateur. Um,
Right.
the so I'm not surprised to hear that you're that you're doing a model game with dinosaurs. I mean, that would be there's some dinosaur factions in other games, but to have like a whole
Oh, sure.
dinosaur combat miniatures game would be pretty interesting. Um, so I have to ask, what's your favorite dinosaur?
My favorite dinosaur has always been Velociraptor since Jurassic Park as a kid. So, I
Yeah,
mean, that just stuck with me. And then learning more about the actual animal, not just the movie version, has always
right.
just been incredibly fascinating.
I mean, that's it's a solid answer. Solid answer.
Right.
I I mean, I like the Therizinosaur for some reason, the
Oh,
really,
yeah.
really huge one. And uh I mean, I think it's like part of that like the so I always have like three pedant like levels of pedantry, right? Like when people are like, what's your favorite dinosaur? It's like, well, technically it's the Nicobar pigeon uh because birds are dinosaurs. And then
Sure.
it's like, oh, you mean extinct non-avian dinosaurs? Great, then that's the Therizinosaur. But then like if we're
Sure.
going to talk about all archosaurs, not just dinosaurs, then I get in the Quetzalcoatlus Northropi because I like that guy too. So
Oh,
it's
for
like,
sure.
yeah, anyway. What are some other like hitters for you that and some of those are in herd. So I'm happy to see them there. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
what are
We
some
tried
other
to,
hitters for you that really
uh, yeah, I mean, Therizinosaurus is a good call, is a good deep cut. That's an awesome dinosaur.
mhm.
Carnotaurus sastri is always one of my favorites, the big South American appealosaur. Um, we're hoping to get that one into herd. It's not there yet, but it'll be a minute. Um, big fan of Pachycephalosaurus, which is a
Yeah,
pretty common fossil found out here. Just because that whole order is really unique. Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal just how many different species there are and how many different amazing fossils have been found of them and what you can, what we've learned. So,
yeah,
yeah.
it's always pretty amazing. All right, so you've got dinosaurs on the brain, you've got game design you're trying to make happen. So like you're working on Herd. You said it was a deck builder game. It's a good, or it started as a deck builder game. So
Yeah.
what were those? I mean, does it just start from a simple of like there's not a deck building game about dinosaurs yet, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like I've known for a while that I wanted to do some kind of tabletop game with dinosaurs. The deck builder game initial idea was like all just focused on paleontology, which would be kind of cool, but then I thought back towards like, there aren't a lot of games where you're like portraying a dinosaur or playing, in
Hmm,
control of dinosaurs, just in the wild
yeah.
doing something interesting. And I kind of had this thought of like, how would that work? How would what would kind of the rules of the game be? What would the point of the game be other than just to survive? And frankly, survival became the objective of the game, and that evolved into this sort of intense, almost like boss rush kind of theme with the way that
Hmm.
the game functions. And I thought it just clicked really well in a unique way that when combined with the art style that we settled on, really felt intense and primordial and, like it had a real attitude and theme to it that worked well.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to talk about the art because that is sort of a big sell point for the game and the process that you went through. But I like that term boss rush. It sounds like a video game term to me. I'm not much of a video
Yeah.
game person, so my first thought is like level design. Why design levels? Just have bosses. Which is that what that means when you say boss rush?
Yeah, that literally is like, if you're just in a video game and the entire point is to fight boss level enemies one after another until either you die or you beat your high score kind of thing.
Hmm.
So it kind of started feeling like that, just this really intense pressure on the players with them controlling a herd of dinosaurs, being attacked every turn by predators of different types with different abilities, and in a way that made it, make sense both logically and like semi-realistically with the way that animals actually behave and work. So
Yeah.
it fell together really quickly and easily.
Yeah. Do you want to talk more about the art part of it? Because that's going to be a big hook, I think. That's I mean, honestly, that's part of what attracted Wet Ink to the project because the art was already there. So we're like, oh yeah, this art style is great. And do you want to talk about that first, or you want to talk more about some of the design elements first,
Oh,
as you're
absolutely. I mean,
describing it?
the art is so pivotal to the identity of the game that it really
Yeah.
can't be ignored, and I'm glad it can't. I was initially really inspired by Gendy Tartakovsky's TV series Primal,
Hmm.
that aired a few years ago. Um, and that very intense thematic visual design kind of helped guide where I was at. I started realizing that like the strongest part of seeing a dinosaur and that sort of visceral feeling to it comes from just a silhouette. And so I immediately started searching out artists who could accomplish a strong silhouette that's readily identifiable as a specific dinosaur species and really showcase that terror, that intensity, that scariness that kind of comes with that. And when I found Jean Westphal, Bonpland Art, I just fell in love with his style, and he was really enthusiastic about the project, and he's been just a godsend to work with. I've worked with a lot of artists on a lot of different game design projects, and he is by far my favorite. He is so helpful and so passionate about paleo art in general. And his input has helped guide new species for the game, new rules or mechanics in the game, as well as the identity and strength of the art itself. And it's been just such a wonderful working relationship. I love having him on board with this project.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be trying to talk to him as well, because it is such a I mean, we have it this we're recording this before the Kickstarter launches, so it's probably premature to call this iconic, but I think that's sort of the thing that it's almost that's kind of the feel that I think it communicates. That it's I hopefully I'll be putting some pictures up. We've already talked some dinosaur species, so I'll probably put those up, and then
Oh
we
yeah.
can use some of this art as well. That it's sepia, but it's grays and whites and blacks on the sepia background. It feels almost like looking into a stone and
Mhm.
seeing sort of an image embossed on a stone. That's how I think of it, and I think that's very
Yeah.
appropriate for the whole fossil theme of like, this is sort of visions of the past. Uh, Rather than sort of a Louis Ray lush, colorful dinosaur production. I mean that nothing wrong with that. Those are amazing paintings, but the desaturated nature of Jan's art is pretty great.
Yeah, I think it just reflects the themes and attitude of the game really well. And like you said, it does feel like looking into the past, which is really cool. And it gives a strong identity to Herd itself, just as a game and as
Right.
a brand, as a thing, as a
Right.
present.
I mean, it won't look like is Dinosaur Island on the shelf. Like you could put those
Right.
two games next to each other and they will distinguish themselves visually. Uh, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that is definitely a thing that will be the case. It will be unmistakable as what it is. I think. Um,
I think that's a good thing personally, and I think it's gonna look great.
yeah, one more thing I wanted to say about it, like I'm sort of almost ashamed to think of it this way, but like there's sort of a comic book. You talked about the like sort of ferocity of the creatures. There's almost like a 300 almost style where like every image you could imagine, the blood splatter on the camera, kind of almost quality to some of the action that is portrayed in the
No,
art. Is
I'm
that
glad you mentioned that. It wasn't inspired by 300 per se, but it was very much inspired by Ricardo Delgado, who did the Age of Reptiles comic book series. And
uh
his art style is phenomenal. He's one of my favorite comic artists and writers of all time. His comic books, I have probably 50 of them.
Hmm.
But yeah, it has that same visceral quality to it. And that is definitely something that helped inspire this as well. Um, and that is a really cool comic series if anyone ever wants to check it out. It's like completely dialogueless, all from the perspective of prehistoric creatures
Yeah.
living and fighting and dying and in prehistoric times.
Yeah. I definitely am aware that it exists. I think it's on, I have a very long list of comics to read, and I think it is on there, but yeah. All right. I'll have to go see, catch up on the trades or whatever, as they
For
say.
sure.
All right. Well, let's talk some more about the design elements because you mentioned the originally deck building and now it's something different, and you mentioned sort of this visceral interaction between the dinosaurs that is captured by the art. So, like, what about the mechanics is doing that? Like, how does the game play? Give us start with a general pitch of the game, and then we can maybe dig into some of the details.
Yeah, yeah. So it's envisioned as a really intense survival focused card game, board game, I guess you'd call it, for 1 to 5 players. Each player controls a herd of dinosaurs of a different species. Each herd has its own abilities, its own defensive capabilities, special adaptations. Triceratops has its horns and crests, so it can like fight back against predators. Uh, Parasaurolophus has, its booming crest of on its head, so it can like call for assistance from other animals. So I wanted it to be very thematic and realistic with the way that these animals are like adapted to survive in an environment. So you're controlling this herd of dinosaurs, and then each turn, this sort of countdown clock happens where it uh, reveals a number of predators that are going to attack your herd each turn. And it's up to you to defend your herd by basically throwing other prey animals in the way of the predators. So you have a deck that you draw from of prey cards that you play, which can boost your herd's defense by basically being put in the way between yourself and them, and also have some special abilities and adaptations themselves, which can really influence the way a turn goes. So basically, each turn you're fighting more and more predators, but you're drawing fewer and fewer prey cards as prey gets depleted over the course of the game. Um, so there's this really intense kind of almost strategic focus on trying to minimize your herd's risk and things, helping to other players to survive if you're able, and trying to fight back against predators or just survive the onslaught of them as the game goes on and approaches the end. So it ramps up to get really intense and really pressure focused, and you have fewer and fewer resources to deal with it as it goes on, and it just creates this really, again, a video game reference, sort of Dark Souls hard
Hmm.
kind of um sense of a pressure on you and the other players to survive, which I found really appealing and I felt fit the themes of the game really strongly.
Yeah, it's not an experience that there's such a trend for cozy games. I mean, cozy games are board games, especially.
Mhm.
I feel like Everdell is very cutthroat, but it's also like you got the cute little squishy fruits that you're
Right.
collecting, and all the art is so wholesome looking, even though it's a very intense drafting game. And I think the same sort of thing is true of Fit to Print is one that I've seen at like every con recently, and like looks really intriguing to me. But I noticed it because it's got a similar anthropomorphic, like
That's right. Yeah.
foxes and rabbits and squirrels and stuff making a newspaper, and like it's a similar sort of like you're building a sheet of your news, and you got to fit in the pieces, so it's very cutthroat, sort of like, no, I took the story that will fit in the square, and then the rest of you,
Right.
sorry. um but the art sort of softens that because it's like, oh, we're animals making a newspaper. It's like, how can you be mad at that theme?
Right.
Whereas you've
Yeah.
gone for the
Yeah.
opposite sort of thing, where it's like, no, this is like you're losing resources, you've got desperate needs on the table, like things are getting worse. Also, here's this terrifying art of like all these predators. And it's sort of like, I mean, not that not that Dark Souls isn't a very popular series of games. So I mean, I think that you're picking up on other themes that I don't see as much right now in board games. So I don't know, is
Yeah,
that
it looks
intentional,
intense.
I guess?
Yeah, it's very much intentional. I wanted this to look as intense as it plays, and I wanted it to really feel, I mean, if you're playing this game and you're playing it with like a group of people and you're all trying to like survive together and have fun with this, it's a great time, but it also you feel that intensity. You feel that that pressure from the game. It's a challenge. It's a challenging
Mhm.
game. And that's something I wanted to encompass because sometimes I feel like games are, I mean, they're, yeah, everyone wants a game that, is fun and easy and light to play. And those are great for certain times. But sometimes you also want a game that really challenges your ability to think on your feet and strategize and use your resources to your best of your abilities. So like, you know, where, Everdell or Fit to Print are, cutthroat but cutesy and have like a really uh kind of unique aesthetic to them as well. This is like a much more challenging kind of experience that will hopefully keep you coming back and playing it over and over again as you try to beat the game itself.
Hmm. It's got almost that. I mean, you mentioned kind of helping out your other herds, and I'm a big fan of cooperative games where you've got things like Ghost Stories and Robinson Crusoe and the old Lord of the Rings game by Reiner Knizia. Like all of these games
Oh
are
yeah.
very much like they're hard. They're hard to win these games, and that's why you want to play them again. You can lose, and then like, oh, well, we only played for 20 minutes. You want to set up and try again, and or you win, and you feel that sort of like we did it, we got there. The the favorable rolls occurred. The decisions that we made were good. We made Robinson Crusoe. It's so much like risk versus reward, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like we made the right choice to risk on this turn because it ended up going in our favor. But if we hadn't risked so much, we couldn't have gotten so much. It feels very satisfying to have made the right choice and applied your resources in the right way. Um, Obviously, there's not as much going on in Herd as there is in Robinson Crusoe. I mean, Robinson
Right.
Crusoe takes up your whole table with card decks and resource piles and all kinds of stuff. So I guess that didn't lead to a question. What I wanted to ask you next was like kind of this balance of like something like how much of this is mechanics and how much of this is theme. I mean, I know the ideal situation is to marry the two together, but like, is there sort of a what I'm thinking about is like the stakes of the dinosaurs, right? Like any human, almost any human who's going to be coming into this game is going to know that dinosaurs are like a thing of the past, except for avian dinosaurs. Uh, you know,
Sure.
the dinosaurs that are featured in the game are a thing of the past, and so there is sort of this like implied, at least when I think about the game or when I play the game, there is this sort of implied like the stakes are like, will you be remembered for all time, right? I mean, like, if all of your species gets eaten before any of you are fossilized, then no one will know you've existed, right? And that is sort of a thing that I'm inventing and that I'm bringing to it. I don't think that's in the game explicitly. Um, so how do you create that stakes on the theme side, in addition to the resources which are dwindling on the mechanics side?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, again, I think a lot of that is very much covered in the art.
Hmm.
And I think that we did strike this sort of subtle contrast between predators, prey, and herds in the game. So, the predators are all really intense and terrifying and focused and scary looking. The prey are all, we aimed for very realistic looks on all of them, but a lot of them are in very hapless situations in the midst of
Hmm.
almost being eaten or being running away from predators, stuff like that. Whereas the herds are all very, defensive in posture. They've got their family members. They've got their their young uh, hatchlings. They've got their mates. They've got it's a family unit, a herd of
Yeah, yeah.
dinosaurs. There's a community there, so you do have this sort of sympathetic want to protect them look to the way that the art has kind of rolled out with the different herds. And a lot of people are going to be able to pick their favorite dinosaur, the one that they love most from, their childhood or from seeing the museum, or that they're just interested and fascinated by. Um, and as we, release the game and as we expand upon it in the future, there's just going to be more and more to love about it and go on. And I think that it just creates a sense of, a really strong sense of wanting to protect your herd and wanting to protect your fellow players in that sort of cooperative way.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about the cooperative aspect of it then. What is like, again, what are the choices that you have? Like you described the process of, you get your predator, you get your prey cards. Those are sort of your distractions. And I mean, I think you didn't say like the it's very numbers based. You mean the predator cards have like a number, like this is a level 6 predator. So
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
you've got to match that level 6 with your own resources as a herd and then these prey cards and stuff like that. So then um what is how does that come
Yeah,
how
so
does that get resolved in terms of like the other herds?
yeah, so your herd has a defense value, or each herd that is being played has a defense value representing, how defensively oriented they are. Stegosaurus or Ankylosaurus have really high defense, whereas like a Brontosaurus does not, but it's also huge. Um, so your defense value is compared to a predator's attacking value. If the attacking value exceeds your defensive value, you're going to lose a herd member when that predator attacks. Your prey cards that you play add to that defense value. So if you can get it up enough to block a predator's attack, it wards the predator off. So while you are generally going to be doing this during your turn to protect your own herd from being attacked, your other players can contribute their prey cards to help boost your defense and keep you alive, and you can do the same on their turns to them. There's a lot of scoring at the end of the game for who's got the most herd members left, who managed to defeat the most predators, and if every player manages to survive to the end of the game intact with at least one herd member, then everyone wins in a greater capacity with more victory points. So there is sort of like a tally at the end of the game to see who comes out on top, but it is very much encouraging you to play together and try and
Right.
survive as a group.
Like most games, the point of the game is to get the most points. That is how so many games break. It's like a joke in our
It's,
table. Like we're like, the point of this game is to get the most points, and you get the most points by whatever the game is. It's like
it is, but I mean, scoring is scoring, and that's a tradition of board gaming for as long as board games have existed.
sure, sure. Um, I mean that's almost like oh, that's like a side. There's a side trail running off there about like ways to design games that are not that way. But like there it is. We could talk about that. But I think I have some
Oh,
more
you
questions
totally.
about herd first.
All
Um,
right.
um, uh, so I guess my only question then I guess is like I mean I don't know. I guess I got a couple questions of one being like what are some of the herds that you got to feature? You talked about like people's favorite dinosaurs and you mentioned a couple of them. So like is there any particular herd you want to describe in detail or like you don't have to go through all of them, but like what kind of things is it just that like defense value and the art for it, or is there something else? They all have a special ability, right?
Oh yeah, they all have special rules and abilities that kind of help define them even further, which also can have like unique interactions with different prey cards you play, which can be really unique. Um, for set one of her, the base game, we tried to basically keep it all to dinosaurs that people know and love that are, the most mass appeal, which sounds schlocky, but people love Triceratops, not just because it's like the one ceratopsian everyone knows, but because it's a very well researched animal that everyone, that
There's
is really well represented.
there's like a lot of them around. Like
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
probably seen
exactly.
one in a museum because they've dug up a lot of specimens. It's
Exactly. So it's we try to focus on ones that are well known, well researched, and loved and understood. So um our first herds are Triceratops, Stegosaurus, Parasaurolophus, Ankylosaurus, and Brontosaurus. So that's like five of the most well known, representing each a
absolutely.
different major group of dinosaurs. or of herbivore dinosaurs that live in herds. Triceratops being one of the most famous and my personal favorite out of these. We gave it a really decent defense score. We gave it a pretty decent head count of numbers of members in the herd. And then we gave it two really cool abilities which affect how it plays. So the first one is before predators attack it, it can actually attack that predator and potentially remove it from the game. So it can gore, a decently sized predator with its horns and, protect itself a little more than other herds can.
Yeah, get
Uh,
that Dilophosaur
exactly.
out of the combat pool before you even have to resolve it.
Exactly. So it's not like it's not going to full on defeat like a huge T-Rex, but it can at least remove a pretty decent threat from the field before it gets attacked by it, which plays into like a more aggressive play style that combines with a few other prey cards. Um, for example, like Iguanodon is a prey card. That's a pretty well-known uh, prey animal. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, and it's got its own sort of ability that reduces a predator's attack value. So it can make the predator that's being attacked by the Triceratops even weaker and easier to kill, um, since it's all based on the predator's attack value number. So playing those two cards together can have some like synergy to it that affects how you want to play out your turn. So we try to build in a lot of interactions like that allow you to not just throw whatever prey animals you have out there to defend your herd, but really strategize in what you're using where, making the most of your resources and playing off of synergies between different cards and different dinosaurs to support one another or support your fellow players if they fall if they're under threat.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, well, I think the last question that I want to ask you about, well, I got two more. I just thought of
Okay.
another one. So there's two more questions to ask about herd, and then maybe we'll talk about some other things to close out the
Okay.
interview. So one is you mentioned like ongoing sets, and for set one, it has these on it. So like, what is sort of the you know, practical, all practical considerations set aside, what is sort of your vision for like what a future set might do or be beyond these initial set of the cards? Like what kind of like extra things would you like to be adding to the game regularly, I guess?
Yeah, honestly, I would love for this game to just keep growing and keep adding more. I mean, there are, literally tens of thousands of different dinosaurs that have been discovered now, and that we're learning more and uncovering more every day. So while the first core set is, just the pinnacle of the perfect starting up point of the game with the most well-known dinosaurs, I would love to see. I've got our first expansion, which will be on the Kickstarter, which adds in specific environments and has a cool environmental rule set to the game, which allows your dinosaur herds to move to different environments and take advantage of various aspects of those things. We're not ready to divulge too much about that yet, but that'll be
Yeah.
on the Kickstarter. But then I also plan on doing a bunch of different sets based on different areas in the prehistoric world and timeline or time zones with
Mm,
it. So like we could do like a whole thing of Cretaceous predators, or we could do a whole thing of dinosaurs from China and Mongolia, which was just a really vivid area where you get like Velociraptor and Tarbosaurus and
yeah. I mean,
Saurus.
that's like, oh, we mentioned the Morrison Formation and the Hell Creek Formation earlier.
Yeah,
Like to
yeah.
dive in, like pick just one paleo environment like that is relatively well known, and just do like a whole slice of like, this is the game, but what is happening in this one particular time and place.
Exactly. So we would
That's
love to
pretty
do stuff like
interesting.
that. We'd love to do stuff like that. I'd love to, in the very far future, hopefully expand it into like the Eocene and stuff, where you would have saber tooths and woolly
Sure,
mammoths and
sure.
all that sort of stuff.
Of course, I'm thinking
And
about like going backwards, and you get the Gorgonopsians and the
yeah,
Dimetrodons and the other like non-synapsids and
yeah.
or
I mean,
synapsid, not non-diapsids.
there's
Yeah,
just so much along the massive timeline that is our planet that you could expand on and just do some really wonderful things
right.
and make it all thematic and really interesting. So I would love to see this game just keep growing and keep adding new sets and keep adding interesting new features and mechanics that we can build on in the future.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool possibilities. So this is the last question about Herd then. So like
Okay.
that's the future, that's the big sky imagination. What is actually on offer for the Kickstarter? We got the core set, one expansion. It is that what's
Uh,
on offer?
Yeah, we have the core game. We have one expansion, Epoch Environments, which I just kind of described. We've
Hmm.
got a set of promo cards, which are going to be released of a bunch more popular dinosaurs or alternate art versions of current dinosaurs, with some extra treatments to them. And then I believe we have a playmat for the game, which will be developed and printed. So we're trying to get this, obviously raised and funded. We really are hoping it's a success, and I'm just so excited to hopefully be bringing this game to life.
Yeah, it's been a ride. It's been a like so it's such a new still a new thing for us as wedding
Mhm.
games to be like developing these card games. And I know I know that this is almost, yeah, it's like almost exact. Well, it's a little over 2 years that I've known about Herd. So like you
Yeah,
mentioned earlier, like how long it's been in development. So like it had to obviously start before that for
yeah.
you.
What
So it's been a
we're in
journey.
2020. We're in 2024 now.
We are 2024 right
I guess I
now.
started developing this in 2020,
Yeah.
all told. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So it takes a while to like go through all the steps, and it's been fun to be part of the process. I've not been as focused on the process. Brandon and I take lead on different things or whatever, but like this is, watching it develop over there, and I see the conversations happening, and I see the new art coming in, and I see the layout work, and it's been like knowing that that's happening and growing, and like we're happy to add this to, like, put it all the stuff, all the treatment that wedding does, like get the big poster, put the big stack of them on the table, and like, yeah, like dinosaur game, you're gonna love it.
Oh, for
Is
sure. Yeah.
is something we're happy to get to. So if you're watching this video, the crowdfunding will be like, you're either watching this video because you came from the crowdfunder page, or you're like, it's going to start uh, November 12th is our proposed launch date. We're obviously recording in the beginning of October, so hopefully that is still when it happens. But at the time of recording, that is the date, October or November 12th. So look out for that. If you're seeing this video, there should be a link in the video to follow the campaign from right now. So, and thank you for your support. All right, Sam, we're not done yet. What else? You said you've got like seven other games that you're like been developing, or like what else is okay, once you can get this out of your brain, and maybe you'll never get it out of your brain, but like what are some other things you're working on? I know you just went to I- because I've seen pictures of you in Greece. You were in Greece
Oh
for a
yeah.
miniatures event. Like, is this like just a like fun weekend, or is this like, no, I'm ranked three in the world in this game, like
No,
I
sadly,
have no, what else
that
do you
was
have going on because like what else you got going on?
yeah. Sadly, that was not for me to compete. My partner got won an invite to
Um,
the Road to Chios World Championships for Conquest put on by Parabellum Games. So they put us up in Greece for 4 days. And we spent about a week all told in Chios and then Athens, traveling for that tournament and that fun, which was a good vacation. As for my own stuff, I've got my tabletop miniature skirmish game Sariana, which is probably going to be heading to Kickstarter early next year. I'm currently working on putting the finishing touches on that. I've got a kaiju themed world miniatures game called Larger Than Life, which is coming out eventually. And then I've got a TC, like a full-on TCG that I'm developing called Redacted, which I'm slowly working up the resources to be able to actually produce, but that one's probably a little bit longer way off.
yeah, I mean this I mean, as someone who has made more role-playing games than anything else, like I'm like, how do you put, I mean, obviously, like people who are creative people, like people work in different media, writers will write nonfiction and fiction, and they'll
Mm.
do a book of poetry, they'll try a romance novel, and so like I guess it's just the same way, but like it seems like these are, how do you do such different things as like miniatures game, TCG, board game, like these are you wrote some stuff for Never Going Home too. So it's not like you haven't
Oh, that's
dabbled
right.
in
Yeah.
role-playing games as well. So like you're doing it all in some respects. So I don't know, is it just that you have like you want to see lots of things exist and so then you have to start working on them, or is it like you've got different parts of your brain, different creative processes serve different creative, parts of your brain, and it's like I don't know, why such a varied repertoire, I guess,
Yeah, I mean, I just have a lot of different, I've got a lot of different stories to tell. I've got a lot of different worlds to build. I've got a lot of ideas for just different mechanics and themes and ideas that just aren't out there in the world right now, and I want to see them come to life. Um, Sometimes the idea is easier to come by than the actual mechanics. So
Mm.
I write a lot of world building before figuring out how the hell the game actually plays, which can be a challenge. Other times I have sort of like this is the kind of game I want to do template, and then I figure out a theme and a genre and a world that really fits well with it. So yeah, my mind is always racing with different ideas and new thoughts. So it is a lot to keep track of, and I try to keep myself organized, which is very difficult. But yeah, I just have a ton of different things that I'm passionate about and interested in making, happen.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the one you said you've got another one lined up for hopefully crowdfunding next year. Is that I assume that's sort of the next one that's furthest along in the process or whatever. So like what is
That, yeah, sorry,
no.
is Carry On. It's a skirmish miniatures game with a sort of combination of steampunk, Wild West, Victorian, and paleontology, all kind of mashed together into this weird West 1800s setting that I've been working on. I think that was actually my first miniatures game I started on back in like
Yeah, you
2016, 17.
you mentioned that earlier in the interview. So this is the one it's like not just still on the back burner. It's like you're working on that next.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's 100% print ready. The miniatures are sculpted, cast, and ready to go. It's just a case of finding the time and the market for it, and
Sure.
getting it out there.
I mean,
Um,
I mean, they're all good things, right? You got dinosaurs, steampunk, weird Wild West, like that all sounds like they're not quite the level of like, oh, you sold, but it's like, those are all popular things. So, I don't
yeah, it
know
was a bunch of
what
genres and themes I like and grew up with and love, and I wanted to explore it in the miniatures game and a unique setting and world. So yeah.
so I hear all those terms and I'm thinking like, okay, so this is like a little bit of um why can't I think of his name? Will Smith and
Oh,
his
Wild Wild West.
steampunk Wild West, but also Dino Riders from like my own childhood. I don't know if that's if you're old enough to remember Dino Riders, but
Yeah,
like they were models of dinosaur little plastic toys, but then you like snap these like technology chairs on them with laser guns and stuff like that, and your little figures would ride on the dinosaurs and pew pew
yeah, I
pew.
remember.
So like I'm imagining when you say dinosaurs and Wild West and steampunk and that's I put all those together. So it's like it, am I headed in the right direction or
Oh yeah.
have I applied things incorrectly?
Oh no, it's my biggest comparison is it's Wild Wild West meets like Dinotopia from back
Dinotopia,
in
yeah.
the 90s, if you
Hmm,
remember that
hmm.
book. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's it's a little bit of that. That's another very much passion project, one that I've just been working on for so long and hoping to bring to life someday.
Is that I mean, tell us all about it. Like you say, you like world building. So like, is it like is it like, an alternate world that just has some of these elements in it, or is it literally
Yeah,
like
so like it's
1880
yeah,
in
so
the
it's an old history like 1880s where this weird rift in space and time has allowed people to extract energy from things that are very, very old to use for like extending their life or replenishing organic matter. So fossils have become like the new currency, the new world power, and it's created boom in fossil digging, paleontology. Back in the 1860s, in the real world, we had the
Yeah.
Bone Wars, which
Yeah, the
was a
Bone Wars. I was about to say Cope and Marsh. Like this is
exactly. So I literally took that, extrapolated it into like an actual war, but like on the
right.
like out on the Wild West on the
It's
frontier.
so what if Bone Wars but Cold War also, or arms race with Bone
Exactly
Wars?
that kind of thing, to the point that like literally two of the factions of the game at launch are Othniel or Charles Marsh and Cope's like cults of personality that they've built around themselves.
I mean,
Uh
no
which is just
notes there for a fellow like paleontology nerd.
yeah. So
Great.
like what is it like Cope's stuff is all like steampunk and automata and stuff all themed around paleontology, whereas Marsh's stuff is all like genetic manipulation with like
Uh,
human dinosaur hybrids and
oh,
monsters, which is really
lovely.
cool. Um, so I
Oh
really blew it
man.
up into like Weird West fictional stuff, but it all just kind of clicked into this really cool setting. And I've yeah, it's as a skirmish game, it's this really hard-hitting, punchy experience where like it feels like a Wild West gunfight where like your character could be like just taken out or winged by like a bullet at any time. And it gets really
Right.
intense, short, fast skirmishes.
Right.
I'm really excited for this one.
That's the, like the famous, the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral is like a
Yeah,
minute. Like it's
exactly.
this. They walked in up to they shot each other and three guys died and that's it's like it's um or I think yeah through more than three maybe but anyway it's yeah so that's all right so all of that sounds pretty fun and I'm sure models like like you're saying like you get a Victoriana steampunk dinosaur mech. Sounds
Uh,
like a great thing to paint.
yeah, let's see if I have art. If I can't remember if I have the art for that one. Ah, darn. Yeah, I don't have the art in here that you could see easily, but yeah, like I built like some really cool like yeah, I got some cool like internal art of like people using like
Yeah,
Gorgon acids as
yeah,
math ifs and that sort of stuff. Or just really cool dinosaur stuff.
sure. I mean, this
Yeah,
is, I mean, I certainly haven't seen it before, so that is sort of like, that's that in of itself is the hook or a hook. Like you've never seen it like this. I mean, I think there are dinosaurs in Deadlands, but like,
yeah,
and
there
there's
are a few games out there with dinosaurs in them. I think Deadlands has some stuff like that. And the Drowned Earth has like a pretty heavy focus on dinosaurs, but every one of the games I design, I try to do something that people aren't doing actively. I mean,
yeah,
there are a million and one Warhammer 40K ripoffs out there or fantasy games with elves and dwarves, but I wanted
sure.
everything I do to feel
Uh,
pretty unique.
Very few with Marsh making dinosauroids and hunting you with
Exactly.
gorgonopsins. Like that is not that is not something I've seen before in any
Exactly.
media. So that's pretty amazing. I'm excited for that. Excited for that. You're gonna
Thanks.
yeah. Well, so we'll look forward for that for next year or whenever you have it. If somebody's interested in either Herd or in this future game or any of your other work, how could they keep up with you? Where can you be found? Where do you want to be found on the
Yeah.
internets? What? Yeah, let us
Yeah,
know.
I'm on Twitter at FossilPunk and Facebook. I have a webpage, FossilPunk Foundry, which is my design studio. So yeah, I'm pretty findable there. Usually more active on Twitter and Instagram than anywhere else. But yeah, I try to keep things up to date and keep new info coming as often as possible.
Cool, 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 cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I don't have any more questions. If you've got anything else that you want to, I was about to say parting shots. I don't know if you haven't been like taking shots today. So you don't have any parting shots, but like that's it. I think we did it. And anything you want to say to close it out?
Uh, Honestly, just huge thanks to you guys at Wedding. It's been amazing working with you guys on Herd. I'm so stoked to see what we do with the Kickstarter. And I'm just hoping we keep going forward with all this in the future. It's been awesome, and you guys are amazing.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's like I said, it's been great. Like Brandon found you connected through the internet and then it's been, yeah, you've got a cool project, and we've been happy to work with you. So yeah, we'll look
Glad.
forward to many more projects in the future for sure.
Absolutely, definitely. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Sam.
All right, bye.
And what's the audience, to the audience, what's your favorite dinosaur? Put it in the comments. And thanks for watching the video.